From Bold Gold Studios in the Liberty Theater building in downtown Liberty, New York, this is another episode of Eye On Sullivan. I'm Mike McGuire. I'm the host of the show, joined today, as I am each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, welcome back.
Wow. I have to tell you, I was in downtown Newport Richey yesterday eating lunch, and it was 83 degrees. And I came back to Newark Airport last night, and it was 7 degrees.
Well, and so for those of us that haven't left, we're used to it.
We drove down a couple of weeks ago.
We did drive down a couple of weeks ago. So folks, Eye On Sullivan is gaining momentum each week, and we want to ask you to help us out to build a great platform and a great show for you to look at and listen to each week. So you go to YouTube or to Spotify to get the audio on Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube. When you're on YouTube, you want to be sure to subscribe. The idea here is we were looking to get 1,000 subscribers, and we're approaching 100 now, so we've got a ways to go. But we want everyone to subscribe. It's all new. We're growing well.
Fine.
And when you're watching us, you want to be sure to smash that like button and then leave us a comment.
You sound like a real media insider.
Yeah, real media insider, all right. So we got a very special guest today. Things are starting to heat up here in Sullivan County, even though the thermometer says 7 degrees.
Well, Sullivan County hasn't experienced a competitive sheriff's race in 20 years.
I'm not sure that even that one was competitive.
It was pretty close.
It was close.
The first one was pretty good. But if you look around the state, they tend to get pretty ugly. Generally taking two apex personalities, and they're going at each other. And this one is living up to the hype. I mean, it's there was an article written on Saturday, which we're going to talk about. It seems not totally accurate, and that's why we asked Eric to be on, so that we're going to go over the article. We're going to go over section by section, and we're going to be able to break down what's happening in the article.
So for the benefit of our audience, we take no sides other than to try to get the information out there for
Correct.
Everybody, get both sides of a story. We've had the candidate, Mr. Diamond, on.
Yep.
We had Mr. Schiff on. And then this article broke. And when this article broke, you and I spoke on Saturday,
Yep.
and we thought that this is the proper platform to provide an opportunity to get, as Paul Harvey always said, the rest of the story.
Well, I mean, at the very least, the accurate story, right? I mean, the River Reporters, commonly referred to as the River Distorter. There are some things in here that are not accurate. We know that for a fact. What is accurate, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the inside on this information. But Eric, the Undersheriff, has firsthand knowledge on all of this stuff. And, it's only fair to give people a platform. As you know, Mike, you and I have been, maligned in the press before, and we were never given a platform.
I've heard that. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gave birth to this. Is
Correct.
Us saying, there's no opportunity to really respond to these allegations, and that's really what Eye On Sullivan is all about.
Correct. So the way it used to work before us was it was basically World War I. You have one guy in a pit over here, one guy over here, and you just lobbing grenades at each other, and and the people are left to figure out what happened. Where we decided, why don't you have the people on and let them, we'll go through it and say, this is accurate, that's not accurate, this is why this is not accurate, and then people can make up their own decisions with facts, not just scream over the top of each other.
And this platform is two-way, because if someone has a comment, somebody has a question, they can reach us.
Correct.
At eyeonsullivan@gmail.com, EYE on Sullivan@gmail.com. Leave a comment.
Correct.
For us on YouTube. Again, always you want to like us, but the most important, I've got a lot of feedback this week following last week's episode with Rich Herring, which was terrific. And the feedback I got is, boy, it'd be great if you were live streamed. Well, that's certainly in the future
Correct.
of Eye On Sullivan, but we've got to get to 1,000 subscribers to do that.
Correct.
To open up that door for our audience, We've got to get to 1,000 subscribers. Then we can live stream. Then we could have people participating in real time.
Correct.
In the show. So we've got the Undersheriff here, Eric Chaboty, and this article from the River Reporter levied some pretty substantial allegations. And one of the things that we see too often in what I call the one-way media, print media, is you get part of the story.
Correct.
Or you get a story, but not the story.
Correct.
And it's important here because the election for sheriff, like any election, but particularly the sheriff, who is the front line of defense in terms of keeping our streets safe.
Agreed.
These elections need to get to the truth. We cannot have distortion out there, and people are using sound bites and clips from an article to make a determination of who's best situated to keep our streets and our schools safe.
I don't think that the best person for sheriff should be the person that has the coolest lines, is really good at social media. That's not what I want my sheriff doing. I mean, he can have him or her can have a department that has that for outreach purposes, but that shouldn't be the determinant factor. This article, to me, seems very one-sided.
Very one-sided.
And again, it's people that have been disciplined by the sheriff's office are the main contributors to the article.
The classic disgruntled employees. As a trial lawyer, I can't wait till I get the disgruntled employee on the stand because, as we say, it's time for filet.
I mean, it's, and so, I think it's only fair that, the undersheriff gets to come on. He's being accused of a crime in this article, which is a serious, allegation to be levied. And, we're going to find out if it goes to people's character or not to levy such accusations to get elected. And then, they don't get elected, and then it's let's bygones be bygones, which several people, Mike and I
we've experienced that.
Yeah. So we've experienced that where they slander you, and then at the end of it, let's bygones be bygones, and I'm like, not so much in the bygone situation because I'm personal friends with Eric. I mean, I'll say that up front, and one of the things I say to Eric all the time is, this is not about you. This is about, he has a wife, he has 2 young children, and when there's accusations being leveled against you, I mean, you should have the right to come onto a platform like this where he's going to have all the time he needs to explain, section by section, and, be able to, get rid of the allegations or, some things obviously he's not going to be able to talk about. If there's an ongoing investigation, but he should have the right to address them all in a fair, unbiased arena.
Well, and the people of Sullivan County will be the ultimate jurors.
Correct.
And they'll make that determination in November. There'll be a primary probably in September.
No.
Or in June. In June 25th.
June 24th,
right.
I believe it is.
So there'll be a primary. So the voters will have an opportunity. What's critical to Eye On Sullivan is that voters have the story,
correct,
not a story.
Correct.
Now, before we bring Eric in, I said that we've gotten more feedback each week, and I got some pretty stern feedback to an episode a little bit ago where I made a comment that as a practicing attorney, at times it takes 3 days to get into the jail. And I got some responses, and I just want to set the record straight.
I just want to set the record straight. Mm-hmm. I've never been in jail. I am not a practicing attorney.
Well, that's true. And some people work much more of their lives to get 3 days in the jail. So I want to be clear. The 3-day comment had nothing to do with the staff, first and foremost. I think the staff over there works hard. They're dedicated. They work long hours, and they try to accommodate whenever they can. And I don't directly think that it's a policy of the jail to make people wait. This is not a situation where I call up on the phone to get an appointment and they say on Monday, okay, we can give you an appointment on Thursday. The problem is with some of the limitations over there, the number of rooms, and the sheriff has assured me that they've increased the number of rooms to try to dissipate that problem, and also the lockdown time during shift changes is an unavoidable problem.
So I've heard this lockdown. What is a lockdown?
So twice a day when there's shift changes, and maybe we can have the undersheriff can give some more information on that. There's an hour in the late morning and an hour in the afternoon where you can't go in because the residents of the jail, the inmates, are locked into their cells. Other than that, the other 23 hours a day, they're basically able to.
It's actually 3 lockdowns a day. One in the morning at the shift change, the 8 o'clock shift change, 12 noon, and then the one in the afternoon.
Okay.
And what a lockdown is, you stop all movement in the jail so you can get an accurate count and basically account for every inmate.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
So during those times, all of the inmates have to be in their pods or in their cells.
So in a working day, it's 3 hours.
It's 3 hours.
That's a lot.
Unfortunately, for a practicing attorney, they often come at times when you're getting out of court, you try to go in, and from time to time, it will happen that they'll say, well, we're in lockdown now. You could come in at 1:30, but we've got 2 other lawyers waiting also to go in at 1:30, so the earliest I can get you in would be 3:30 or 4. Well, at 4 o'clock, I've got something else going on. It doesn't work, and that's what the problem is. So I want to be clear. This is not a situation where you're calling up and they're making you wait 3 days. It's just the way things come together.
Between scheduling and this lockdown
Right.
situation.
This is not a reflection
That's
on
fair.
the staff at all. Okay. We've taken a little bit of time. Hopefully I've cleared that up. I'll only know tomorrow when I have lunch whether I did or not. But I want to bring in our Undersheriff Eric Chaboty, who's here, and we appreciate him jumping in to help us out with understanding the lockdown situation. Eric's been the Undersheriff here now for 20 years. He came in with Sheriff Schiff. And before we get into the meat of that article in the River Reporter, I think it's important for the people of the county, as we've done with the sheriff and as we did with Mr. Diamond, to let Eric let the people of the county know what his background is and what he has done, not only for the last 20 years, but for the last 30-plus years. So, Eric, welcome to Eye On Sullivan, and tell us about your background before we get into the article.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for providing this platform to have these discussions, to have these conversations, because certainly nothing like this exists anywhere in Sullivan County. So you guys are the first, the most recent ones. There have been podcasts in the past, but they've just kind of gone by the wayside. So we really appreciate you taking on this labor of love, because you don't get paid for it.
We do not.
We do not.
Keeping the public informed, that's very important. So, my background. So, I'm born and raised in Manhattan.
Inwood.
Actually, Washington Heights.
Washington Heights, right up the road there.
Right up the road, okay.
And,
Right up that big hill there.
it's amazing how many people from Washington Heights live in Sullivan County now. I run into them all the time. I started my law enforcement career in 1983. I became a New York City police officer at the age of 20.
Yeah. I think
by
I went
nine-
up to like 89 or something.
By 1987, I saw the writing on the wall, and I bailed out to the state police, went to the State Police Academy. And then when I graduated from the State Police Academy, I was assigned to Middletown and then the Pine Bush Satellite Office.
So when you were in the New York State Police Department, where were you stationed there?
So when I was in the New York City Police Department, my last command was the 2-6 precinct in Harlem. And they affectionately called it the hole in the donut, because even though you were in Harlem, really not a lot went on there. You had Columbia University on the South Hill and City College on the North Hill, and really nothing went on in between. The next
Barnard
precinct,
across the street.
yeah, Barnard was next to Columbia. And the next precinct to the west, the 2-8, that was a high crime precinct. But so it was a great place to work, and believe it or not, that's where I learned community policing, because the police officers in that precinct knew everybody in the churches, in the businesses, in just the residents of the area. And
This is very community oriented.
that area of Manhattan was very community oriented. So anyway, I then went to the state police in 1987. I graduated the State Police Academy in September, was assigned to Middletown, and then the Pine Bush Satellite Office. I had a 2-year stint with the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Detail, technically back then it was called scales, weighing trucks, measurements, oversized vehicles, overweight vehicles. I got promoted to sergeant in 1997 and transferred down to New York City. Back then, I was one of 2 uniformed members of the state police in New York City. It was myself and the recruiter. Everybody else was in the BCI. Today, you've got a bunch of troopers down there, hundreds of them tripping over each other. Yeah, down in New York City. Yeah. So then I came back in 2003 to the State Police Barracks in Liberty, where I was a sergeant there, and I retired at the end of 2005 to join Mike Schiff in the sheriff's office and become his undersheriff. I spent some time with the State Troopers PBA. I was the Troop F delegate, and then I was the sergeant's delegate for the eastern half of New York State, and I was also, at the end of my career with the PBA, I was the treasurer of the PBA. And when I left that organization, it was a $2 million a year organization. Now it's over $10 million. It's amazing how it's grown.
So it's incredible that you have that experience in union leadership, because we're going to now get into this article and take the balance of our time to really drill down on the article. We're going to try to present both sides of the allegations, and then we'll let our audience will make the final determination on where they think the truth lies. But one of the allegations are that the undersheriff is anti-union and is disciplining people because they're involved in a union, and yet you were part of the leadership of 2 unions.
Yes, well, actually, it's the same union, 2 different units within the union. They each had their own bargaining certificate. But yes, I defended members as a union delegate. But by the same token, you can't let misconduct affect the organization negatively. I mean, the organization, the police organization, the agency. So it's a tough call. I've been on both sides where, you try to defend somebody who really did commit misconduct. Sometimes you think, well, they're being a little harsh. But I've been on both sides. So, and it's funny because I'll get grievances from both the jail side of the house, which is represented by CSEA, and I'll get grievances from the PBA, which is on the patrol side of the house. And you can see when they serve me with the grievances, they look all nervous. And I tell them, don't be nervous. This is God punishing me for all the grievances I filed when I was a state trooper. So it's just a matter of business.
At one point, you when you were in the state troopers, I remember the story you telling me that you represented someone on a dog got hit by a car, and then that you cleared that person. It was a white truck, I believe, and then that person went all the way up to become, I believe, he became an inspector in the state police.
Yeah, actually, he made it to inspector, I believe, or deputy superintendent. Yeah.
And imagine if he didn't have good representation there. I mean, he's still driving up and down 17, having a nice day.
Yep, that person was just on a rumor. They thought he had hit a dog and failed to report it, and they were actually taking samples of blood stains off his truck when I had to intervene.
Yeah,
so, I've been on both sides.
That's the night that the lights went out in Georgia.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy story.
So let's get into the article.
Okay, here we go.
I think most people have seen the article. Certainly, it hit with quite a splash over the weekend.
It did.
So
let me give you the background on that.
Okay.
So the reporter who wrote the article is Ruby Rayner Hasselkorn is her name.
Mm-hmm.
I know her as Ruby Rayner. I've had a very good relationship with her since she arrived at the River Reporter. She would always call me up, ask questions about incidents, ask for quotes. I always try to accommodate her. So on this past Friday, I get a text from her saying, hey, are you going to answer my email? And apparently I had missed it. She sent me an email on the 26th with 6 questions in relation to this article she was writing. I quickly went to my computer, opened the email, answered them as best I could. I did put in my email that a couple of them I needed to talk to her personally because I had to put them in context. You can't always convey the context in an email. I sent it. She said she received my response, and then I attempted to call her. I wasn't able to get through on Friday. I texted her, I called, went to voicemail. Then on Saturday, I tried again. 2 phone calls, 2 texts. What was interesting on Saturday, the phone didn't even ring. It's as if my call was blocked. It went right to voicemail. So
Wow.
by Saturday afternoon, I realized I was being ghosted, that she didn't
Wow.
want to talk to me. Well, I couldn't understand why. I was so out of character for her. We've always been upfront with each other, good, bad, indifferent. We've always been.
So the
upfront.
genesis of the article.
Hold on.
Right.
So
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
then 10:30 Saturday night, I get a call that there's an article from the River Reporter, and basically it's a hit piece against me. That's why she didn't want to talk to me, because she probably didn't want me to defend anything that she was going to put in there. So go ahead.
Correct.
So the genesis of the article seems to lie with 2 officers who they relate have served for years in the sheriff's office to try to, and that's done by the media to immediately lend credibility to the allegations, because by and large we like to trust our police officers, and I think by and large in this county we've been very fortunate we could trust them. And when I read the article and we were talking about putting this episode of Eye On Sullivan together, my initial thoughts were that we were not going to mention the names. I was aware of who the names were. But then as you read the article, they're quite proud to be quoted and have their names out there. So I don't think that we should cover this episode of Eye On Sullivan with a veil. They've put their names out there. They've given up whatever confidentiality there was in their own disciplinary proceedings. Correct. So we're gonna start there, Undersheriff. They talk about 2 officers who have served the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office that they're positioning themselves as the classic whistleblowers. So we've got Detective Jack Harb, who is the president of the PBA.
And I believe their contract is currently being negotiated.
Correct. They're in negotiations now.
No, negotiations have not opened.
Okay.
Okay.
Not for any county.
Well, they should have.
union.
They should
The
be opening
contract
because
doesn't expire till the end of this year. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
the end of the year. Well, why not?
Wow.
We'll open those on the 15th of December, I guess.
Wow, I did a really good job on that
Yeah.
thing, huh?
And then the second one is a retired lieutenant who had been a detective and then was promoted to lieutenant, Lieutenant Slavic. So that's the genesis of the story. So, Undersheriff, just so that we get the whole picture, the circumstances under which one leaves the sheriff's office and one remains in the sheriff's office, I think gives people a pretty good insight. And as a trial lawyer, we look for bias, and the truth comes in unfolding that bias. So what about those 2 officers?
Well, Lieutenant Slavic, and I'm not talking out of school here, he posted on Facebook the other day his suspension letter. He had been on suspension with the sheriff's office for several months when he resigned in December of 2023. And he was able to, once he resigned, he was able to convert that to a retirement because he had bought back some military time. But he was actually on administrative suspension for quite a while when he left. So he's not happy with the sheriff and I.
Now, is it true that you ran against him for his committee seat in the town of Neversink?
Yes, we live in the same district.
Okay, so you live in the same district in the town of Neversink, and you both ran for a
Republican committee seat.
Republican committee seat. So there's a little tension there.
I don't think the tension's from that. I think the tension's from work.
But you know, a lot of times it's a lot of chips that add up to, you know.
Yeah, I don't really think so.
And then with respect to Detective Harb, he also was relatively recently promoted to detective, and he paints the picture that you've gone after him because he's the union president and because of actions he's taken, which of course was interesting to me given that you have a similar background in a leadership position within a union. So what are the circumstances? In fact, there's been a development in Detective Harb's case that he talks about, disciplinary case, and they quote extensively from the hearing in that a fine young lawyer in the county attorney's office prosecuted successfully. I don't know who taught that young man, but he must be good. Not good enough to work there, but good anyway. what is the rest of the story on Detective Harb?
Well, again, I'm not talking about anything that's not confidential.
That is confidential.
That is confidential. Detective Harb made a motion to open up his disciplinary hearing to the public and talked extensively about what the charges and the allegations were. So basically what he was charged with was misconduct for basically talking derogatory about a senior sheriff's office lieutenant at a right after roll call one day. He got up there and read from a statement, basically made a lot of derogatory statements, and it so alarmed the people that were at that meeting that they actually reported it to Chief Muthick, and that's what started the disciplinary process. So it had really nothing to do with him being a union person. As you can see from the testimony in that hearing, he immediately went into defense mode and started saying he was a whistleblower and that it was an anti-union animus case, and that's how it developed.
Now, his argument was that those comments were made not within the context of official duty, but it was part of a union meeting.
Yeah, so the hearing officer, we just got the result back, he felt different. He felt that the comments preceded the quote-unquote union meeting, which was an unofficial meeting, and I'm quoting Detective Harb. Apparently, they were doing a vote count on the contract is what they were doing. So it wasn't your traditional union meeting where they say the Pledge of Allegiance, and there weren't even any minutes.
They were just polling a bunch of people.
They were just counting the votes that had been made in a ballot box. So, again, according to his, him opening up his what they call a Section 75 hearing under the Civil Service Law, he basically reads from a prepared statement and says a bunch of derogatory things about the lieutenant. And then they go ahead and count the ballots. Now, the people who were in that meeting, they were so concerned, they went and reported it to the chief, and that generated an internal affairs investigation. So that's it in a nutshell.
So part of what Mr. Harb is saying has been, debunked, basically.
What do you mean?
So he's saying that it wasn't during a meeting. It was during a meeting, and you're going after him because it was a union situation. And we're finding out that's not true.
It had nothing to do with being a union situation. We just can't have anybody, union person or not, running around inside the sheriff's office. This didn't happen in some restaurant.
No.
Or some.
I mean, we're not sitting around having a couple beers here.
Yeah,
talk bad mouthing our bosses.
This is with people on duty in uniform. He happened to be on a personal leave day that day when he came in for the vote count, but we just can't have somebody getting up after roll call and talking bad about the bosses. It's detrimental to morale. It's detrimental to the structure of the agency.
I agree. And now Sheriff Schiff, when he was in the state troopers, he was a union representative as well, correct?
No, he actually was. We were trying to get binding arbitration.
Okay.
The troopers were stuck at 24,308 for 2 years in the 90s. We had guys on food stamps. And he led the charge to basically, first we tried to get rid of the PBA because we didn't feel they were doing enough. And then when that didn't work, we came back and we knocked off individual delegates in each troop until we controlled the union. Then we got Governor Pataki to sign binding arbitration, and we started building from there.
So he's worked a lot with unions.
So he's the father. Mike Schiff is the father of the modern labor movement in the state police.
And I can tell you, so just so everyone knows, the county sheriff is a co-employer with the county. So when you negotiate, contracts with the sheriff's department, it's a tricky game we're playing here, because you're negotiating with the labor pool, but at the same time you're negotiating with the sheriff, because all three have to agree on the deal.
Correct.
Right? So that's why you see these contracts go 7-8 years. They're a very tricky game because you have to please all parties involved. And I can tell you from negotiating, labor deals with the men and women in the jail and the men and women in patrol, Mike Schiff looks out for the rank and file union employees more than better than their legal representatives were doing, where he was saying, I don't accept this. And I was like, oh, well, they did.
Well, they go 7-8 years when nobody wants to take it on. You just keep ignoring it and hoping it'll go away.
So let's get back to the article.
Yeah. So let's get back to the article.
So anyway, this hit piece comes out Saturday night and makes some serious allegations.
Yes, it does.
The most concerning one is that I ordered a accident report to be falsified. That's their words. That's Ruby Rayner's words.
And that's I want to stop you there and understand that words have meanings. They
Correct.
don't say changed. They say falsified. So again, Eric, what I want to do is something that Ruby Rayner did not do. I want to give you an opportunity to go through the circumstances. Maybe a lot of people in our audience don't understand how accident reports get done, how they get reviewed, because I know in court they're used all the time. So why don't you take us through, Undersheriff, the accident, what we know about it quickly, and then get into the report, how it's put together, how they're reviewed in the ordinary course.
So this goes back to 2020. This is 5 years old. I get a call from the then chief of the Liberty Police Department, which was Scott Kinney, as she identified in the article. He tells me that his officer was involved in an accident. The sheriff's office investigated it. He's looking at his police officer's memo that the officer had to provide as part of their internal investigation, and the memo doesn't match the accident report. He tells me that the accident report does not say that the police officer had his emergency lights on. The accident report also does not say that he was in emergency operation.
So what is that? What's the significance of having the emergency lights on?
For a public safety vehicle operating under the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law, that's something you'd want to know in the accident report. Were they just driving around making turns at random, or were they going somewhere? And so apparently what happened in this case, the car was proceeding eastbound on Route 52 in the vicinity of the Panda Parlor in Liberty. Everybody familiar with that? They have great ice cream. Anyway, he apparently the police officer gets a call and turns on his lights and then makes a U-turn to go back up into the village and gets hit, or collides with the car that was following behind him. So I tell the chief that I will take care of that. So I find out who investigated the accident. I direct the deputy and the sergeant who reviewed the accident to, take a look at it and make these corrections that the chief was asking for. So apparently they do that. They add that the police car was in emergency operation, had its lights on, and it made a U-turn.
Now, neither of the deputies witnessed the accident.
That is correct.
So the information in the accident report comes from the investigation, which means any witnesses that may be there.
They interviewed the two drivers.
That's going to be the witnesses to most accidents.
Right. So I directed them to amend the report. In fact, if you look at the report printed on the River Reporter website, it says amended report. So that's a normal thing that goes on in police agencies all over New York State.
As more information comes in,
sometimes they'll say, "Hey, you didn't put the right registration down. You didn't say this. You didn't say that." Most recently in that 8-car pileup in Rock Hill, the deputy accidentally put a underage child as the driver, a 10-year-old down as the driver, and the parent as the passenger. These things happen, especially
investigations that are ongoing, and we often don't comment about ongoing investigations.
But what happens today is there's a scanner hooked to the computer. You scan the barcode on the driver's license, you scan the barcode on the registration, and it populates the field. And unless you're not paying attention, it might not end up in the right place. So anyway, long story short, they go ahead and amend the accident report to reflect that the lights were on, that he was in emergency operation. Approximately, I want to say 6 months later, I hear that a video has emerged that was taken from a surveillance camera at the Panda Parlor, and that the video does not match up with the accident report, is what I'm told. Again, I'm hearing this as a rumor. I don't hear a complaint from the driver of the civilian car. I don't hear a complaint from Liberty PD. Approximately 2 years later.
So now, let me just stop you there. The video doesn't comport with the amended accident report. In other words, the video allegedly shows
that was the
cars.
rumor. That was the rumor.
Okay, but that's what the allegations are.
This was such a trivial thing for me until that video appeared on the River Reporter website. I had never seen it because, it was so trivial. My understanding was the village was found at fault anyway and had to pay for the guy's damage. But there were no injuries. There was nothing really serious to this thing. So 2 years later, a lieutenant, actually Lieutenant Slavic, approaches the sheriff and says, hey, this video doesn't match the accident report. And the sheriff's response was, 2 years later you're telling me about this? What's the story with that? So what we have here is Ruby Rayner claiming that Blake Muthig at Jack Harb's Section 75 discipline hearing made the statement that I ordered the accident report to be falsified. Now, the beauty of this is Ruby Rayner put that actual transcript on the website. And when you go to Blake Muthig's testimony, he never said that. So she puts down that Blake Muthig says, I ordered the accident report to be falsified. And then they put a line at the bottom of that paragraph, falsifying an accident report is a crime. So Ruby Rayner and the River Reporter are basically accusing me of a crime. And I have to say, now I know how Nicholas Sandman felt when he was in front of the Lincoln Memorial and got accused of a confrontation with some Native Americans there. I know exactly how he feels. Because
well, he's driving around in his Ferrari now, so don't worry about it.
So this is a serious allegation. And when you include my conversation with the chief of police in Liberty, that makes it a conspiracy.
Sure.
So that never happened. And what Blake Muthig actually says is he believes, and this is his opinion, that the first version of the accident report was more accurate than the second. I don't know where he gets that from, but I can tell you what is posted on the River Reporter website. She put the accident report, incident report, the amended accident report up there. You look at that accident report, you look at the video, and I challenge you to show me that those two don't match exactly.
So the video is there.
The video's up on the website. The
accident report is there.
Then the amended accident report, not the falsified accident report, the amended
So
accident
the amended accident report and the video are identical.
Identical. And what we're doing here is, and now I understand how Trump was a victim of the media mob and the Russia hoax. It just happened to me.
Oh, hold up. It happened in this county. I mean, someone accused me of calling a young lady I've never met before a horrible name right up the road here. The mayor claimed that the supervisor of the town claimed that they had a videotape. I was like, well, do you have the videotape? We went up there to get the videotape. We don't have the videotape. This county spent $10,000 to get the videotape, and we hired an outside firm. They found it, and they cleared me 100%. By the way, nowhere on Facebook did that pop up. Nowhere in the newspaper did that pop up. So when you get slandered or you get muddied up by non-truths, no one's there to say, oh, sorry about that. There's no one there to say that. They just say, oh, did you see that about, Eric Chaboty? That's all they say.
So truth doesn't sell newspapers.
Right, right. And when you look at the video, you see the police car coming down the hill towards the Panda Parlor. The lights come on as he's pulling onto the shoulder. And he obviously wasn't paying attention. The car behind him, initially I was told that the car behind him T-boned him as he was into the turn. But really what happened was the car was trying to pass him at that point.
Oh.
And he turned into the car.
Thinking he's going to be pulling over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the only thing that's up for debate in that accident report is the final statement that says that the civilian car did not yield to an emergency vehicle. That's what's up for debate. But that's not a crime.
Correct.
But everything else, as you see in the video and as described in both the incident report and the amended accident report, are exact. So I don't know where we're getting this from. But as you know, you throw out a headline, you make an allegation, and you know people aren't going to read however many 200-300 page transcript to see
Not
if it's
gonna
true or
happen.
not. But I'm telling you, you look at Blake Muthic's testimony, he never says Eric Chaboty said to falsify that.
I mean, you look what happened to Mr. McGuire and the whole case at the motel here, and it was, Mike's a bad guy, blah blah blah. The Mid Hudson News did a whole story on it, had a ton of information, and Mike was 100% cleared on that situation. But no one says, "Hey, Mike, sorry about that. We got it wrong." It doesn't work like that, and that's why this show is so important, that you can get out here and tell your story.
And again, just to be clear, if someone from the civilian car had called and said, I think that there's a mistake in this report, that information would have gotten into the report also.
That's correct.
Yeah. And again, for our audience benefit, these reports are used every day in every court across the land. They're not dispositive of anything, because neither of the two, the deputy or the officer, is often not a witness. They didn't witness the accident.
Correct.
This is what the two people said. Well, the two people can get on the stand and they can refute whatever they want to refute. That's a document. That's what's called in law a hearsay document. It can come in under a business records exception. That's not what we're here for today. But it's just a compilation of the information that was received. All right.
That is correct.
So
The important
Go
thing
ahead.
here is you got to watch the buzzwords.
Correct.
They're using the word change. I changed the accident report, and then Ruby Rayner takes one step further and goes, I falsified the accident report, which makes it a crime.
And now you've never been accused of that before in
No.
any other form.
No, no.
now they rely on an association of sheriffs to suggest that this is improper behavior, this sheriff's accountability action.
Yeah,
I
that is
assume
not-
from reading it that's a sheriff's group
No.
that's trying to be self-policing. Is that
no,
what that is?
No, that is not a sheriff's group. That's a police reform group. And when you look at their website, they say some pretty inflammatory things. Like, for instance, there's 550,000 people incarcerated in the United States in the custody of sheriffs that haven't been convicted of anything. Well, no kidding. If you're being held on bail pending a trial, yeah, you are in a facility not being convicted. I mean, it's a political sleight of hand that they're using. And so you can tell right away when you go to that website that Ruby Rayner relies on, and that group for their comments, they're an anti-police organization.
And just to be clear, what role, if any, does the sheriff of a county play in determining who is or is not housed in their facility?
The sheriff is an officer of the court, and when the judge gives an order to hold a person pending trial, he must follow that order.
So he can't say, well, I don't think the judge was out of his mind. He shouldn't be here.
No.
Let him go. That
No.
doesn't happen.
The judge can be held in, the sheriff can be held in contempt.
Okay.
So the second major allegation is that a hostile work environment exists within the sheriff's office, and they point to an episode where it is alleged that somebody made an untoward comment about Jewish and Palestinian friends. Now, I know that the sheriff is Jewish. I know that the sheriff has a wonderful reputation amongst all areas of the county, including our religious residents and visitors, as well as non-Jewish. And I know that Detective Harb is of Palestinian descent. So were those allegations looked into within the sheriff's office?
So apparently, Detective Harb has apparently been recording everybody in the sheriff's office for at least 5 years. And now that we're in the election season, he's picking out sound bites and making complaints about them.
With no context.
From what we can tell, no context.
Okay.
And listen, we
Very important.
have 200 employees in the sheriff's office.
Correct.
Somebody somewhere is going to have a misstep.
So you have 200 employees for 20 years.
Right.
Obviously, those employees some have come and gone in that time frame.
Right.
So you've had 2,000 employees, realistically, at least over that time.
I don't know about that much, but
Yeah,
It's been quite a
I mean,
substantial
the
amount.
turnover rate's, pretty high, right? I mean,
It's more on the jail side. It's
Yeah.
more of a turnover because we have just 100 employees alone in the jail.
and as we all know, young men say stupid things.
Listen, again, 200 employees, and anything can happen. So
Sorry, Jacob.
anyway, can you tell me where we're going with this question?
Well, that's one of the allegations in the article was that some I don't even remember who it was attributed to. I thought it might have been attributed to the chief.
I believe it was.
That he had made a comment about Jewish friends and Palestinian friends. Well, I'm guilty. I have Jewish friends and I have Palestinian friends.
So we received that determination within the last 2 weeks, and it was not investigated by our internal affairs unit. It was investigated. The complaint was made to Human Resources, and then they hired an outside agency to investigate it, and they made that determination. We're actually in the process of looking.
Said it.
That he said it, and he should be disciplined.
Okay.
What's interesting is that conversation supposedly took place sometime in 2023, and you only have 1 year to discipline management confidential employees, and 18 months to discipline union employees. So we have to see where we're going with that. Of course, as you know, the sheriff, depending on the context of the comment, the sheriff does not tolerate hate speech or any type of inappropriate conversation. So, I mean, we're looking into how they arrived at that.
And again, to be clear on process, what happens, folks, when a complaint is made to Human Resources, to the Commissioner of Human Resources, she, Julie Deisher, will look into that. If there is any evidence to support, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not even a preponderance,
No.
any evidence to support the allegations, then the report is founded. But you don't get disciplined on that report alone. Then formal charges can be propounded by the appointing authorities, the official term, but it could be the department head, usually the department head or the commissioner or the elected official. And then Undersheriff mentioned Section 75 of the Civil Service Law. That is the formal due process that Detective Harb spoke about in the article. And so a founded report really just says that there is some evidence to support. Again, is no context added to it whatsoever. So the second major allegation, or third major allegation, that is leveled against the sheriff's office by Detective Harb, happens to be Detective Harb again, occurred at a meeting at the Department of Family Services, where the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, and the New York State Police, working in collaboration with one another, have created a task force called the Family Violence Response Team. And I know a little bit about the Family Violence Response Team. They will investigate allegations of child abuse that has both a criminal and a family court component, usually serious abuse, usually sexual abuse or serious felonious assaultive behavior directed at a child. And I'm just doing a setup for the undersheriff, and then I'll let him take it from there. The sheriff had decided that they needed to have a sheriff's representative on this family violence response team. For a couple of years, short on staff, for whatever reason, they didn't have anybody on that task force. So now it was time. And I had, as the county attorney, I had mentioned something to the sheriff about they're down a person on the family violence response team, and it might be a good idea to get a representative back from the sheriff's, get the sheriff back involved with it. The district attorney's office has had somebody on there. And so, Undersheriff, take us now to the thought process, take us behind the curtain, so to speak, and then we wind up at this meeting where there is representatives from the state police, representatives from the county, representatives from the Department of Family Services, also part of the county.
So the Family Violence Response Task Force was created in the wake of the Christopher Gardner incident. That was a young child who was beaten to death and really slipped through the cracks in terms of social services and child protective services. So it was that task force was created in the 90s. We were actually the first ones assigned to it, and then the state police came on board later. Bobby Clark, who was one of our detectives, had been on it for many years, and eventually he retired.
I think Lieutenant Pratty was the first guy.
Actually, Pratty was the first
guy.
Then Donnie Prince.
Yeah.
And then state police got involved. And anyway, so Bobby Clark had been on for a while, and then eventually he retired. So we really, because, and that was probably around 2009 when all the budget cuts came, and they were talking layoffs that thank God never happened. So there was talk about getting representation back on that task force is really what it is. So we went up to talk about assigning, we went up to Liberty, and Jack Harb was with us, and we were talking about assigning him to this task force. And I know the commissioner had some questions, which was John Little. He wanted to make sure we were putting somebody up there who was capable.
And this is somebody, again, Detective Harb had been involved with the schools. I think he had coached, so he had experience dealing with young people. This was not sending him to Siberia.
No.
This is an important task force. This is a task force that investigates serious crimes against children.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
So the context of this whole thing is it's a female-dominated unit, and they do a phenomenal job. You do not want these women after you if you've committed a crime. They will get you, and they will hold you accountable.
Relentless.
They're relentless. It's led by a senior investigator from the state police named Nancy Stack. I worked with her in uniform 30 years ago. My next-door neighbor, literally my next-door neighbor, Georgia Harris, is on there, as well as other Child Protective Service and social workers.
A lot of county employees and a lot
of county employees. So in the process of having the discussion, those people, the women, were out of the room, and we were kind of marveling at their success, and the term came up that they were the estrogen mafia. So at the time that term was used, the context was it was meant as a comment on women empowerment. And I'll tell you where I first heard the term estrogen mafia. I was visiting some relatives of my wife's down in South Carolina, and we went to a softball tournament. And they had a female softball team there called the Estrogen Mafia. In fact, they had a banner that said, "Estrogen Mafia, hear us roar," which I think was a nod to the Helen Reddy song, I Am Woman.
Yeah.
And
I won't sing it.
Please don't. Thank you.
So I've heard that term used in that context all the time. I've used it. And if you go on the internet, they sell T-shirts all over the place, Estrogen Mafia. So
and it's a compliment.
It's a as far as I'm concerned, and I've heard it used, it is a term of female empowerment. And if you look at what we do at the sheriff's office, especially at our Facebook page, at every turn we're trying to push women to exceed to their ability. We have a female lieutenant. We send women to these specialized female street survival schools. Wherever we can, we put them on special details. We're always trying to recruit more women. For a while there, we were the only police agency, aside from the state police, we were the only police agency that employed women. Fallsburg's always had one or two. To this day, Monticello has none. Liberty finally got one. They actually stole somebody from us who was in the jail, a female CO. They reached her on the list before we could. But so we've always been on the forefront of pushing women police officers to reach their maximum ability. So what's happened here is this incident took place in December of 22. And now that we're in an election cycle, Jack Harb is offended.
He is
and
offended.
he in the article, he expressed righteous indignation that he has a couple of daughters, and he would be working for Megan Galligan at the time, was the female DA. And basically, this is the pattern that's gone all along in this campaign, that they'll take a soundbite and then they'll supply the narrative.
Now, to be clear, they're attributing that comment to you, correct?
So I understand that and this was just hearsay, but I understand it's probably true, that not only did I say it, but the commissioner of social service or family services said it. Apparently, he was called in and counseled on that, admonished, and I never was. I was cleared by the outside agency investigating
So
this.
an outside agency comes in, listens to the tape,
Right.
determines, who said it.
Speaks to the people that were there.
Yeah, speaks
They
to
do
the
a
people that
thorough
were there,
job.
and they do a very thorough job, and I thank them for that. And they determined that you did not say it.
No, they said I said it, but the context wasn't a problem.
Okay. And then someone else has been disciplined for that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why. It's confidential, and I haven't been privy to. I've heard, third hand. But
And they have the right to the
and
confidentiality.
the River Reporter, apparently they've listened to the tape, and then they add that there's some laughter about it. I think the any type of laughter was like, yeah, it's like when you talk about senior citizens, how they jealously guard Social Security and the right to vote,
Sure.
and you call them the Gray Panthers. Watch out for the Gray Panthers, and you chuckle about it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing derogatory. There was nothing demeaning about the women we were talking about. We were just using
I mean-
basically a term for, like I said, women's empowerment.
And now, your wife rose to the level of captain in the
No, she was the deputy superintendent
Pepper.
for security at Otisville, the number 2 at Otisville.
So you
State corrections.
So you've cheered women
and
on all
all
the way,
along, yeah.
all the way.
Yeah.
So
And you've got a daughter
and
who's
you have a
very
daughter?
successful.
Yes. So anyway, the allegations are baseless.
Mhm.
But I like to say, you can see the pattern that's emerging here,
Mhm.
and in this campaign. So you guys are familiar with Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, right?
Oh, yeah.
I printed them in the paper one time.
Yeah, so basically what they're doing here is they're using rule number 5,
Yeah.
which is ridicule is a man's most potent weapon.
The isolating, which I believe is 8. Right?
And then 13, pick the target,
yeah.
freeze it,
Mm-hmm.
personalize it, and polarize it. So
You are the
we're-
boogeyman.
yeah, so we're using a couple of techniques here to indirectly attack Mike Schiff and his administration and make him look bad. But we're here to explain what's going on. Now, let me just go back to the Axon report. So the allegation is that there's an active FBI investigation. Within the last 48 hours, Paul Slavic has posted on Facebook, in addition to his suspension letter that he was suspended, he has posted that he's the one who called the FBI. So apparently, from what I can gather now, he thought he would get us in trouble. So he contacted the FBI.
And that's a retaliation.
and-
'Cause he was already suspended.
And how long ago?
No, apparently he was contacting the FBI prior to that.
Okay.
So this is 2-3 years.
But we didn't
ago.
know it. See, to retaliate, you have to know,
Have to know.
that it's going on, and we didn't know.
So he did this 3 years ago now.
I'm thinking 2020 or 2021, from what I can tell.
So we're talking
But-
4 years ago.
So from what I So from what I understand, and now I'm hearing, once these little facts come out, you start hearing from other people. Apparently, he wanted to. Don't forget, this happened during the 2021 sheriff's race, and he thought there was a gentleman named Tyler Hutchins who was going to run against the sheriff. He never got enough signatures on petition. He was going to run as a Democrat. It appeared he might have been Mike Schiff's opponent back then. So I think that's when this started with Paul Slavic calling the FBI. And from what I'm told from some people, that he actually made a nuisance of himself. He would call the FBI so much they didn't want to talk to him anymore. They wouldn't take his calls. They actually referred him to the Attorney General. According to Jack Harb's testimony in his hearing, he called the Attorney General. They gave him a case number, and that was the last he heard from them. So what happened last week, Tim Diamond was making the allegation that we have an active FBI investigation going, and Nate Henderson from Sullivan Legacy actually filed a FOIPA, which is different than a FOIL. He filed a FOIPA with the FBI, and they're saying there is no investigation. Now, just because you call the FBI and say, hey, this is going on, doesn't mean they open an investigation. And I think that's what happened here. They looked into these allegations that Paul Slavic were making, and they were baseless. They were totally baseless. So they never opened an investigation. He's saying there's an investigation. He's the only one saying it. So now what happens is Ruby
But we
Rayner.
do know, in fairness, we do know that representatives of the FBI did speak to a couple of people in the sheriff's office.
Yes, that's what we now know.
So
They never spoke to myself, and
Right.
they never spoke to the sheriff.
right.
And
Who-
if there was an investigation, they would have to.
Sure.
And listen, an accident report investigation from 5 years ago, you can imagine that's, if anything, that's a low priority on their docket. So what's important here is Tim Diamond now says he makes a statement. There's an active investigation. Nate Henderson refutes it. Says no. Here's the FBI foil. Ruby Rayner writes this article, and Tim Diamond goes on Facebook and says, see, there's proof there is an FBI investigation. Why? Because Paul Slavic says so?
Well, I mean.
So anyway, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. Exactly.
That's where we're at. These are baseless allegations. It's the Russia hoax all over again, just like with Trump. And they put out these sound bites. People don't have time to read a 300-400 page transcript. They just look at the headline, Eric Chaboty ordered a accident report to be falsified, and then that's the buzz in the county.
I
And
agree.
It's absolutely not true.
And folks,
100% not true.
the undersheriff mentioned the rules for radicals. Go online, Google rules for radicals, Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky was a neighborhood organizer in the Midwest, Chicago area.
Chicago,
I think.
yep.
I think one of our presidents may have worked very closely with him.
Yes, he did.
And over the last 10, 15 years, when you look at where the state of politics has gotten in this country, local, state, and federal, and doesn't matter to me who you're voting for, who you're supporting, I only want you to be aware that these rules for radicals are being followed in school board elections and
Correct.
right up to the presidential election. This is what we're seeing. And Rob, I remember you and I used to sit after meetings and literally say, well, we heard number 3 today, number
Correct.
5 today, and number 8 today. It is a patterned way that people are running for office, and it's very, very dangerous, folks, for our audience. Take the time to hear the facts and then make your own informed decision. Undersheriff, I want to ask you one other question, because you talked about your background with the union, the sheriff not with the union, but certainly you referred to him as the father of the modern New York State Troopers contract and
Labor
movement, and he certainly was a moving force to make that really one of the top jobs in the country. So Mr. Diamond has retired. He had a retirement just a couple of days before he announced for sheriff.
Correct.
And yet he said that he referred to himself as the executive director of the Investigators Union. Now, in my understanding is the union officials are people that are still on the job and working for the union. So how is that possible that he's the executive director of a union after he retired, and yet he's running for elected office in a different agency?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know there was a press release that he was getting that position. I had a conversation recently with Kenny Jones. He's the retired undersheriff from Orange County, and he's actually one of the founding fathers of NYSPIA, which is the New York State Police Investigators Union.
If everyone remembers that race, I mean, that was a nasty race, too.
Yeah, so I had talked to him about it, and I asked him, how's this possible? I didn't realize there was an executive director position in the union. And he said he doesn't believe it's a real position, that it was made up for Tim Diamond. He's being paid by the union. And from what I'm hearing from some investigators who belong to this union, that Tim Diamond...
They're paying dues.
Dues-paying investigators, yeah. That he's not going to let elections occur for a new president until the primary to see if he wins or not. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean if he doesn't win, he comes back as the president? I know the number 2 guy, Billy Diaz, used to be the vice president. Now he's the acting president. So basically, I think what's happening here is, and this is important for BCI investigators and the state police, I think their dues are subsidizing Tim Diamond's run for sheriff. And, the one video he made after Mike Schiff posted the FOIL from the FBI, he says, I'm taking a minute off from a busy day of campaigning here to make this video, this very short video. Well, shouldn't you be doing union business? So basically, that's a question that's out there that I've heard. And, it's, again, that position, some people wonder if it even exists in the bylaws. And, I'm sure the people who are on the board are, hopefully they're showing some concern. I know as a union board member, executive board member, I'd be really concerned if some retired guy had a job all of a sudden. And that also goes to the endorsement that he posted for the investigators union, basically endorsed himself as the executive director.
Well,
so.
you know what? Charity starts at home.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
and it's important to say that Mike Schiff's has been endorsed by the Uniform Union, which is much bigger. It represents about 6,000 people, state troopers, PBA. And
so-
he's been endorsed ever since 2005, so this is a regular thing for them.
So, Chairman, as always, this is the fastest hour
Well,
of the week.
we went a little over this
We're
week.
a little over.
But I have to tell you, it's a fascinating conversation. Obviously, you and I are very, willing to give someone, the platform to, try to, clear up a story, because when it was happening to us, there was no platform.
There was no platform.
And I thought you did a very good job today on the sheriff.
Thank you.
I think you adjudicated yourself, very well. I mean, people now, I think, have a better understanding of everything that happened, because they never come out and tell you the decisions of the Section 75. They never, that's all inside baseball stuff to people.
Well, right now they're throwing the word corruption around. There's corruption in the sheriff's office, but they won't tell you exactly what it is. And if you're able to get any soundbite out of them what it is, it's things like this accident report that got amended. That's all you got from 2020.
Yeah. So
That's it.
my whole thing is, if Mr. Harb has been recording conversations for 5 years with everyone that, I imagine no one's talking to him at this point in time.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been with them lately. No.
And this is what you got? Have 5 years of
And supposedly, from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, he's going to release more recordings in the weeks coming,
Well, let's get after it.
weeks
All right.
ahead.
All right.
Well, I mean, that's certainly going to make everybody feel very comfortable to know that a person is surreptitiously recording what should be confidential meetings. But again, Chairman, as we say each week, we could go on for several hours,
Correct.
but I'm not sure that DoorDash is going to bring our staff anything to eat. Folks, if you see Eye On Sullivan as an important piece of your information source in Sullivan County, to understand more about the people, places, and events in Sullivan County, what we need you to do is subscribe. We need to get to 1,000 subscribers. That will open up our opportunity to live stream, give you more input into the content of the show. We want you to subscribe. We want you to comment on the show and comment on. We will not shut down comment.
No, we will
If
not.
there's comments, if there's another side of a story, we will talk about the comments, as I did when we opened up the show, or we will have you on and let that side of it be told.
This is not going to become the fan over
This is
here.
not going to become the fan.
Okay.
No. And again, smash that like button.
Yeah.
It helps us out, and it will help us to bring you the information that you need in a detailed way. So you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Spotify, and you can reach us by email at eyeonsullivan@gmail.com, EYE on Sullivan@gmail.com. So on behalf of the chairman, Rob Doherty, I am Mike McGuire. We thank the Undersheriff for taking time out of his busy schedule to respond and give the folks in our audience the information that they're going to need to make ultimately a determination
Correct.
on who's best suited and best situated to safeguard our schools, our children, and our streets. So, folks, that does it for another episode of Eye On Sullivan. We'll be back next week with another episode. We thank you for listening. We ask you to subscribe, to smash that like button, and to leave us a comment subscribe, like, and comment. EyeOnSullivan@gmail.com. Have a great week, folks.